Happy morning, children. Today we are going to learn a new topic. What is that new topic? Now, before coming to the new topic, I'm going to give you one small exercise. Now close your eyes and have a deep breath. Breathe out. So what you understood from this breathing exercise? When you breathe in, so the gas enters. When you breathe out, the gas come out. Okay. So this is how all the living organisms do know. So what is that process name? Now you're in class 10. There's nothing but the respiration. Yeah, good. So now respiration means what? You can simple way of definition, you can say that exchange of gases between the living organisms and the environment. Yeah. So that is known as the respiration. Okay. So this is the topic we are going to see in this class. Okay. So I'm going to take you that what is respiration and what are the types of respiration and what are the different steps involved in the types of respiration. We are going to see one by one, children. Okay. Now let me share the screen. We will see one by one. So are you able to see the screen, children? Yes. So today we are going to learn what is respiration and what are the different types of respiration and what is the process involved. What happens after respiration and during respiration also. Okay. So what do you mean by respiration? It is the exchange of gases between the living organisms and the environment. Yeah. So now, yes. So this is the definition. We can say in any way, we can say the definition in our own words. Okay. So exchange of gases between the living organisms and the external environment. Okay, children. So when you breathe in, oxygen is entered. When you breathe out, carbon dioxide is given out. So this is the process. We are already familiar with the respiration. Okay. So now let me say what are the different types of respiration. So before that, so there is a physical process which is happening without the knowledge of the living organism. Without our knowledge, we can say. So we are also come under the living organisms. Yes. So now without our knowledge, this breathing in and out happens. So that is known as the external respiration, where the exchange of gases takes place. This we are already familiar from our lower class itself. Okay. And apart from that, there is another respiration which takes place inside the living organism. That is known as the cellular respiration. Okay. Why that the term cellular respiration? It takes place inside the cell, each and every cell of the living organism. Okay. That is known as the cellular respiration. Okay. So what happens in the cellular respiration? Where the oxygen which the living organism breathe will be completely broken down, and along with the food which we eat, that is also completely broken down, and it will give you the energy, and the carbon dioxide is given out. So we are breathing in and breathing out. That's a simple process, physical process. External respiration, I told you, breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. This is a simple process. But in between this breathing in and out, what happens? That is the cellular respiration. And along with this respiration, energy is produced. Using that energy only, all the metabolic reactions takes place in the living organism. So what is the metabolic reactions? It is nothing but the biochemical reactions which takes place inside the living organism. Okay. What is biochemical? Why I say biochemical? Bio means life. Chemical means the reactions which takes place in the living organism. So in simple term, we can say that life is a chemical reaction. So without the chemical reaction, no life. Okay. So now let me say the difference between the internal and external. Now look at this. It is the types of respiration I told you. The external respiration is nothing but the organisms obtain the oxygen from their environment and release carbon dioxide and water vapor. So we breathe in, okay, we breathe in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide. Along with that, some water vapor also will released. Okay, only carbon dioxide will be released out. What about the other gases? Other gases also be there, but main gases which is essential for the respiration are the carbon dioxide and oxygen. So oxygen is very essential for all living organisms. Is it so? All the living organisms need oxygen for their survival. We will see that in the next slide. So now in this external respiration, it is the physical process, just now I told you, and this internal respiration is nothing but the cellular respiration. That is, it takes place in the within the living cells. Okay, within the living cells it takes place, where the food which we eat will combine with the oxygen, and it will be completely oxidized and broken into simple substance. So that is known as the biochemical reaction. Okay, children. So there are two types of respiration: external respiration and the internal respiration. External respiration is the physical process, and internal respiration is the biochemical process. Okay, children. Now, in the cellular respiration, we have two types of respiration. Just now I asked you one question. Do all the living organisms need oxygen? Yeah, almost all the plants and animals, they need oxygen. Okay, but there are some living organisms, they don't need oxygen. What are they? They are the microorganisms. That, let me explain now. So what is the aerobic respiration? From the term aerobic itself, you will come to know that it is the oxygen dependent respiration. Oxygen is very essential for this respiration. So the cellular respiration, in which the organic food which the living organisms eat, and it is digested, and finally it is assimilated and given to all the parts of the body. This we have learned in the digestion process itself. Yes, so this food which has been broken down, it will mixes with the oxygen which we breathe in. So we can say that digestion and respiration, they are the co-sisters, we can say. Once the digestion is completed, the respiration, no, we start doing this. So it mixes with the oxygen and it go and give the energy to various parts of the body. So aerobic respiration is the oxygen dependent respiration. It occurs in most plants and animals. Whereas anaerobic respiration, which takes place in the absence of oxygen, there is no need of oxygen, but the organic food will be converted into some product. What are they? Ethanol or lactic acid. Okay, children. So it takes place in the microorganisms, I said. So namely here yeast. Yeast is the microorganism which will produce the ethanol during its respiration. It will respire in the absence of oxygen. It is a microorganism. So do you remember in your class 8 microorganisms lesson, second lesson? So it is nothing but the yeast, which is the microorganism which is producing the ethanol during its anaerobic respiration. It will respire without oxygen. And the bacteria, it will produce the lactic acid in the absence of oxygen. Okay, so now what is this yeast and the lactic acid bacteria production? Have you heard about the fermentation process? Can I give some examples, or you can give some examples for the fermentation process? Yes, have you heard about the fermentation process? Yes, during the microorganisms lessons itself, you would have learned about the fermentation process, isn't it? So the fermentation process is nothing but the anaerobic respiration process. It takes place without the oxygen, and this process is being used in the bakeries and during the batter preparation in our house, during the idli preparation, or during any other wheat flour which has been prepared and it is kept for a certain period. No, have you heard about that big puri? That puri is nothing but the chola puri. They will ferment for 10 to 15 minutes. They will add some curd and they will ferment it. That is another example for the fermentation process. This is an anaerobic respiration. And your mother will be preparing the idli, no? Idli for preparation. She will soak the rice and she will grind it, and she will keep it overnight. And the next day she will prepare the idli. Have you seen that idli batter in the morning? What is the difference between before the fermentation process and after fermentation process? If you have not seen, no, go and see that. Okay, observe the fermentation, but the flour will rise and there will be more bubbles will be there in that. It's because of the heat which respire in the anaerobically without oxygen. Okay, children. So this is about the aerobic respiration and the anaerobic respiration. Okay, now let me explain the aerobic respiration, children. Okay, so now look at this aerobic respiration. This aerobic respiration, I told you, it takes place in the presence of oxygen. Yeah, and all the food products will be finally converted into glucose in the living organisms. Okay, and this glucose only is going to enter each and every part of the living organism inside the cell, and inside the cell it mixes with the oxygen which the living organism breathe, and it produces the carbon dioxide and water and energy. So this reaction is nothing but the biochemical reaction along with the oxygen and the digested food. Okay, so this takes place in the presence of oxygen, that is known as the aerobic respiration. Okay, so what is this ADP? Have you heard about ADP? I told you ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It will be having three phosphate group in it, whereas ADP is adenine diphosphate. It will be having two phosphate in it. So during this conversion, glucose to carbon dioxide and water in the aerobic respiration, this ADP molecule, no, it is the molecule which is present inside the cell, each and every part of the cell, and it will be converted into ATP molecule, triphosphate. This diphosphate will be converted to triphosphate. So you will be having more energy. This ATP molecule only is going to synthesize the protein. It is going to fight against the microorganisms which enter the living organism, and it is going to give energy to do various actions like watching this video. You're watching this video, no, with your eyes, hearing what I say, hearing, and at the same time I told you to take notes. So this taking notes with your hand, all these are physical actions. How come it happens? With the help of the energy that is known as the ATP. Okay, children. So this happens in the aerobic respiration. This is nothing but the cellular respiration, which is where the organic food will be completely oxidized into carbon dioxide and water with the presence of oxygen. Oxidized means what? Oxygen should be there, and you'll get the energy that is known as the ATP molecule. This is the biochemical reaction. So the formula of glucose is C6H12O6, and the oxygen molecule, it is nothing but the 6O2. So why it is 6O2? Because you have to balance the chemical reaction. Yes, we have to look on both the sides. All this you will be learning in your chemistry class. Now for this biology class, I'm just explaining that C6H12O6, this glucose is a carbon 6 molecule. Okay, so this carbon 6 molecule will combine with the 6 molecule of oxygen, and it's going to produce the 6 molecule of carbon dioxide and 6 molecule of water, and along with that you will get energy. So this is energy only will give you the power to do anything. Now, this power, where it is produced? In the cell, in the living cell. So up to this carbon dioxide production will take place in the cytoplasm. You know what is the cell, living cell? Do you remember the plant cell and animal cell, which we have learned in the class 8? So the animal cell, now recollect the animal cell. In the animal cell, okay, we have the cell membrane, and inside the cell you have a nucleus, and between this nucleus and the cell membrane you have the space. That space is known as a cytoplasm. So in the cytoplasm only this conversion of glucose to pyruvic acid will take place. Okay, so the 6 carbon molecule will be converted into 3 carbon molecule. Glucose is 6 carbon. So it will be broken down. This process is known as the glycolysis. What is glycolysis? It's a splitting of glucose, breaking down of glucose. The glucose will be broken down into 3 carbon. 6 carbon will be broken down into 3 carbon. Okay, so now up to this glucose to pyruvic acid is the first stage. In this first stage, it happens in the cytoplasm. Okay, children. And then this pyruvic acid, after its production, will enter into the, what is this structure? This structure is nothing but, can anyone say? This is the mitochondria. Very good, smart. So this mitochondria is known as the powerhouse of the cell. We have learned in our lower classes what is mitochondria. It is the powerhouse of the cell. Yes, so this mitochondria only will produce the energy ATP molecule. Okay, now look at this picture. This pyruvic acid is going to enter into the mitochondria. So mitochondria have 3 layers: outer layer, inner layer, and the innermost layer. Outer membrane, inner membrane, and the matrix. Okay, so this through the outer membrane, this pyruvic will enter. from the cytoplasm into the mitochondria. Inside the cell it is happening. Okay, so inside the cell you have cytoplasm and you have mitochondria now. So inside the mitochondria, the pyruvic acid has entered. So it will undergo this cycle. What is this cycle? Have you heard about the cycling? You know cycling? Like this is a cycle because it happens. How does a clock works? Around 24/7 it is working. So like that it is also working in the living organism without our knowledge. See, I started with the respiration process, but now where we are inside the cell. This happens inside. Now I am speaking, now you are listening. All this happens simultaneously even though we listen this class. Okay, we are surviving, we are living because of this energy production inside the mitochondria. Okay, so now this pyruvic acid enters inside the mitochondria, and inside this mitochondria, in the matrix, that is innermost region, in the matrix only this TCA cycle will take place. What is this TCA cycle? This 3 carbon, I said no, pyruvic acid is entering into the matrix of the mitochondria, where the pyruvic acid will be oxidized. What is oxidation? Addition of oxygen. We breathe oxygen, I told you. So look at this. The oxygen is entering here. So inside the that is mitochondria, in the matrix, the pyruvic acid is oxidized. So in this process only the carbon dioxide is produced. Okay, 6CO2 is produced in the matrix. And then and using the rest of the oxygen molecule, there is a chemical energy production. Look at this arrow mark. It happens in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. This is the inner membrane. So look at, these are the inner membrane. These are the inner membrane. So in the inner membrane of the mitochondria, these electron transport will take place. Where these electrons are coming? These electrons are coming from this TCA cycle, this tricarboxylic acid cycle. This was invented or by the person known as the Krebs. Okay, he discovered this. So this is this hydrogen atom transport system. So that is, electrons will be transferred. What does that mean? I told you here, this ADP will combine with the phosphate and produce ATP molecule. So this process is going to produce here. So where the coenzymes will be there in the cell. Coenzymes are nothing but enzymes, no? Enzymes are the biocatalysts. They will assist the conversion of the reactant to product. These coenzymes, they will assist the enzymes itself. They are known as the coenzymes, like a nicotine adenine dinucleotide and nicotine adenine dinucleotide phosphate. Then FAD, NAD, we will say. These are all in depth. So for this class 10 level, they are just mentioned NAD, FAD. They are the coenzymes. They get oxidized. NADPH and FADPH, they will get oxidized and they will give out the electrons. So those electrons will be accepted by this oxygen which is entering into the mitochondria. Okay, so this oxygen accepts the electrons. So NADPH, I said no, that will be converted into NADP. It will give the oxygen to the, it will give the hydrogen atom to the oxygen. So this water will be coming out. This is how the electrons are transported in the innermost membrane of the mitochondria. Shall I repeat? So glucose is first converted into pyruvic acid. This is a 3 carbon. This pyruvic acid is entering into the mitochondria. In the matrix, the Krebs cycle will take place. It is a tricarboxylic acid cycle. That is, the pyruvic acid is converted into carbon dioxide, oxidized. So next, the rest of the reaction will take place in the innermost layer of the mitochondria. This is the innermost layer where the electrons are transported, and the oxygen which is entering into the mitochondria, rest of the oxygen will accept the electrons and it will convert it into water. So this is how the electron transport chain will take place, and this process is known as the oxidative phosphorylation. What is oxidative phosphorylation? Using the oxygen, the phosphorylation takes place. What is phosphorylation? I told you that ADP will accept one phosphate and then it will be converted into ATP. Diphosphate will be converted into triphosphate. That is how the oxidation phosphorylation takes place, children. Yes, am I clear? So these are the stages of aerobic respiration, children. Okay, so now let us move to the anaerobic respiration. Yes. Okay. Now look at the anaerobic respiration. It's very simple. Very simple. Without oxygen, the products will be produced. Where it happens mostly in the yeast and then bacteria, and also occurs in the human beings, living organisms also. Have you heard about the muscle cramps? Muscle cramps are nothing but you are you breathe in, but sometimes you may not receive the oxygen. Some places of the muscles will be stiffened. Lactic acid deposition will be there. That is an anaerobic respiration. Yes, you'll have pain in that area. Now I am not using this place means here there is a swelling area, the stiffness will be there, muscle cramps will be there. There is the lactic acid deposition will be there due to the absence of oxygen. There's a lack of oxygen, we can say. That metabolism also you'll be learning later in your higher classes. Okay, now for this level, anaerobic respiration equation, I tell you that glucose C6H12O6 will be converted into lactic acid. This is the lactic acid fermentation. Now only I told you that muscle cramps, where the lactic acid deposition will take place. Along with the energy will be produced here also. And then some bacteria also undergo this lactic acid fermentation. They also receive this lactic acid. In the absence of oxygen, they will respire and their glucose will be converted into the same way and they will get the energy. And the next is alcoholic fermentation, like yeast. I told you, no, this fermentation process in the idli batter. I told you this glucose will be converted into ethanol, and then carbon dioxide will be produced here and energy will be produced. Here only lactic acid will be produced, and here the ethanol along with the carbon dioxide will be produced and energy will be produced. This is how the anaerobic respiration, where there is no oxygen, lack of oxygen or absence of oxygen. Absence of oxygen, without oxygen, the bacteria and the yeast, they will respire and they will produce the product. Okay, ethanol and lactic acid. Whereas lack of oxygen, I told you that muscle cramps. So this is the lack of oxygen which takes place in the human beings also. Okay, so it's about the anaerobic respiration, children. Any doubt in it, please ask me now itself, or you can go home and then you can verify and again come back and you can clarify your doubts. Okay, shall we go the recap? Yeah. So today's class we started with the respiration process, and then what is the definition of respiration? It is nothing. Can anybody say? Yes. Good. So it is the exchange of gases between the organisms and the external environment. Next, what we have seen, there are types of respiration: external respiration and the internal respiration. External respiration is nothing but a physical process. Breathe in, breathe out. So exchange of gases will take place. Whereas internal respiration, in the cell, inside the cell it happens that food is completely oxidized into small parts with the help of the oxygen, where it is the biochemical process takes place. And the next is the cellular respiration. This is nothing but the aerobic respiration and the anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of oxygen, anaerobic respiration in the absence of oxygen or the lack of oxygen, and aerobic, most plants and animals do this respiration only, whereas anaerobic, ethanol is produced and lactic acid is produced by the fermentation process of yeast and the bacteria, and lactic acid also produced in human beings, that is known as the muscle cramps. And the next is you have the aerobic respiration is nothing but the presence of oxygen. This is the equation of the aerobic respiration. Glucose along with the oxygen will converted into carbon dioxide and water and energy. Okay, where the phosphate will be added to the adenine diphosphate, you will get adenine triphosphate. This is the aerobic respiration. And then what are the stages of aerobic respiration? It is the glycolysis process, Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. So glucose will be converted into pyruvic acid in the cytoplasm. Here 2 ATP molecule will be produced and the pyruvic acid enters into the Krebs cycle. Here the tricarboxylic acid will undergo it's a tricarboxylic acid cycle, where the pyruvic acid will undergo the oxidation process, so that it is known as the carbon dioxide will be released, and again the chemical energy is transferred to the inner membrane. This happens in the matrix, and it is going to the inner membrane where the electron transport chain happens, where the oxygen will be coming there. Here also oxygen is there. Excess oxygen will accept the electrons during the process. The electrons will be transported from one product to another product. So where the electrons will give out the water. along with the oxygen. So here high energy ATP molecule will be produced, and this ATP molecule will be utilized for various purposes. How this electron transport chain occurs is the help of the coenzymes. So the NADH, FADH all will get oxidized. They will release the hydrogen atom electrons, and they will combine with the oxygen and they will produce the water. This is how the glucose connected to carbon dioxide and water with the help of the energy along with the combination of the oxygen. Okay. And the next is, we have studied about the anaerobic respiration. This is about the lactic acid fermentation, where the glucose will be converted to lactic acid with the help of the enzyme, and then energy will be produced. And in alcoholic fermentation, glucose will be converted to ethanol and carbon dioxide. Along with that, energy will be produced. And in muscle cramps also, lactic acid will be produced where there is a lack of oxygen. Understood? This is how the respiration process. I hope you understood well. If you have any doubts, please ask me now itself. Okay. Tomorrow, come prepared for the 2 minutes slip test. Okay, children. Thank you. We'll see you in the next class.